We are marching into March, aren't we? Can you believe it's March already? I say that every month, don't I? Can you believe it's March already? It's March already, and we are marching right into March. We are also, well, I won't say we're marching into the land of plenty because we're there, and we're preparing to set up camp in the land of plenty. How many people are preparing to set up camp? How many people have already set up camp? How many people are already experiencing the benefits of the land of plenty? That's where we're dwelling this entire year, you know. So as we march along with our different things that we have been dealing with each month that have allowed us to dwell in the land of plenty. We started out with an outrageous abundance, and then we went to bodacious love last month. And this month we have explosive blessings. Explosive blessings. Think about that, explosive blessings. A couple of days ago, someone asked me about that explosive blessings. They had a problem with explosive. That word just kind of bothered them. And my attitude about that is open your mind. Explosive means to burst forth. And that's what we want to have happen without limitation, without restrictions. Explosive blessings. Blessings represent the favor of God. And so to have them exploding in our lives, I like adjectives like that. I want blessings to explode in my life. I want them to burst forth. And explosive does not have to be a negative. So just think about it. Take a breath and just think about just having explosive blessings, which is what we're having right here, right now in this center. And so this month, because we're going to be we're going to go back to, I think I mentioned a few months ago that we're going to be going back to basics and really starting to dive deeply into the 7 sacred practices here. And as we do that, it deepens our spiritual practice and it expands our consciousness the more we get into the 7 sacred practices here. And so that's why the blessings are going to be so explosive, because thank you very much, Dave. Are going to be so explosive because we're going to dive deep into that which will just excavate anything that's there that's blocking us experiencing the favor of God. And so every month I say to you, hang on to you, fasten your seatbelts, hang on, because we really are going to get rid of all that stuff that doesn't serve us, get rid of all that stuff that would block, and really allow ourselves to move into that place and that space where we really are living our purpose, which is to express God's love. That's why we're here, to express God's love. And so this month we're going to be looking at the sacred practice of visioning. And you've heard me talk about visioning before. I talk about that's what we started a vision corps here back in June, I think it was. And we vision every week for God's idea of what Creative Living Fellowship is, God's vision for Creative Living Fellowship. Visioning is a meditative practice in which we just go into a deep state of meditation and just open ourselves up to God's vision for whatever it is we are seeking clarification about or direction on, whatever it is. It could be for our individual lives. It could be for this church. It could be for a project. It could be for a group. But the whole idea is God has an idea about everything. God already knows how it wants to show up as everybody and everything. And so what we want to do is to tap into that idea that God already has. God already knows what its idea is for your life, for my life. We don't know. So what we want to do is open ourselves up to receive God's idea, to catch God's vision for our lives. And visioning is a process that was developed by my teacher, Michael Beckwith, at Agape many, many years ago. And it's a way of training ourselves to be able to see and hear and feel and catch God's idea, catch God's vision. Visioning is not visualization. In visualization, we already know what we want. We have an idea in mind of something that we want or something that we want to experience, and then we have pictures of it. We keep the picture in our minds and we focus on it, keep it in our imagination, we focus on it, or we put it on a vision board or a treasure map or something like that, and then we look at it all the time. And by us doing that, we can bring it into manifestation. It's a powerful process, visualization is. That's also one of our 7 sacred practices here. But visioning is so much more than visualization. In visualization, we can, as I said, bring things into manifestation simply by continuing to focus on it, continuing to use our imagination, seeing what we feel like when we have it. I remember many years ago, a friend of mine was the same friend who told me that God is bigger than the IRS. Okay, that friend. She was director of the ministry, World Ministry of Prayer for Religious Science in Los Angeles, and there was a car that I wanted, a specific car that I wanted. So I called her at the Ministry of Prayer and told her I had been visualizing this car. I had it on my treasure map. This is a car I want. It's white, it has red interior, and it's this particular brand and this particular model, making this particular model. And so that's what I wanted her to pray for. And she said, I can't pray for that. And I said, why not? And she said, I can pray for the car that's for your highest and best. I can pray for your highest and best transportation. But I can't pray for that specific car that's outlining. I was really upset with her. And I had been involved in Science of Mind for over 10 years by then. And I said, well, how not? I know what I want. She said, but God knows much more than you do about what you want and what's best for you. So I'm going to pray for your highest and best. I'll pray for God's will for you. And I said, but God's will may not be what I want. And she said, I can pray for God's will for you because God's will for you is so much bigger and better than you could ever know. And I was so upset with her because I wanted this white car with the red interior. And everywhere I went, I saw, you know how that is when you focus on something, everywhere you go, you see it. Everywhere I went, I saw that car, and she wouldn't pray for it. And you know what? That car stayed on the market 1 year. It had all kinds of problems. It had all kinds of issues. It didn't sell very well. And it was gone after a year. I haven't even seen it on the road since then. And you know, I really got an understanding of what it means to know that it's better to be open and receptive to what God has in mind, because God's idea is so much greater than ours, than our limited vision. My limited vision was, that's the car I want, that's the color I want it to be, that's the interior I want it to be, and all that. And she's saying, I can't pray for that. That's outlining. So even with all my visualization, what she was doing was opening me up to visioning, opening me up to being available to God's idea. And that's what visioning does for us. It opens us up to God's idea, because God already has an idea of what our life is supposed to look like. And so that's what we're going to be talking about all month. There's a specific process that we use in visioning. And we go into this meditative state, and we become, one thing that's coming through my mind right now is the whole idea in visioning is to become self-empty and God-filled. Self-empty and God-filled. Self-empty and God-filled, because when we are opened up, when we are visualizing, we are looking at things that we want. Our mind is focused on what we want. When we are visioning, we're letting self, the small self, go. And we're becoming God-filled. We're becoming filled with God's idea. And so what we do in the visioning process is to sit in meditation. And there are questions that are asked. What is God's vision for my life is the first question. Or what is God's vision for CLF? Or what is God's vision for whatever it is you happen to be visioning for? I worked with a couple a few years ago who were getting married. I had moved to Ohio, and they were in California. And they wanted to vision for their marriage, for their upcoming marriage. And so every week, for a couple of months, we visioned for their marriage. That's the first time I've dealt with someone who wanted to work with someone who wanted to vision for a marriage. It was a wonderful idea. They got so much clarity about how they wanted their lives together to be, things that they had not even thought about. Everything can be visioned for. You can vision for your lunch if you want to. That was a joke we used to have, that Reverend Michael required us to vision for whatever we were going to eat the next day. Not really, but it seemed that, because we had the vision for everything. Before we started off with anything, we opened ourselves to God's idea, because God already knows what it wants to do, how it wants to be, as each one of us. It already knows. And so today we're going to go through the process. Let me tell you about the questions first. The first question is, what is God's vision for my life? And in this month, we're going to be just talking about my life, because my life, your life, our individual lives is how God works, how the visioning process works. Visioning is a transformative process of self-examination. We have to examine ourselves. We have to change, because the vision can only be brought through us. It's not brought from the outside in. It's brought from the inside out. The vision is already within us, and we are opening up to reveal it, to become aware of it, to allow it to be made manifest in our experience. The questions: what is God's vision for my life? What is God's vision for my life? And then the second question is, what must I become? What must I become? Because we cannot experience anything that we are not willing to become. We cannot experience anything that we don't have the consciousness for. And so becoming is a part of opening our consciousness, of expanding our consciousness. And the greater consciousness we have, the broader our consciousness is, the more of God's vision can come through in our experience. And then the third question is, what must I release in order for God's vision to be made manifest? What must I release? What must I let go? Let's take a breath. First thing is to let go of your breath. Let's breathe. What must I let go? There's always something that we're holding on to. So oftentimes we don't realize it, but when we ask that question in visioning, something might pop up that you didn't even realize you were holding. And you may say, I didn't know I was holding on to that. Or you may argue with it. The next question is, what must I embrace? What must I embody? And usually that has to do with spiritual qualities. But we ask the question, and then we wait to see what happens in the process, what answers we get. And then we ask the question, is there anything else I need to know? Is there anything else I need to know? Powerful process visioning is. Powerful process, because it opens us up in a way that we haven't been open before. It opens us up not to tell God what to do, but to experience all that God is, experience all that God is already doing, experience all that God is being. And that's what we want to align ourselves with. And so as we go through the process this month, I'm going to continue to remind you to not discount anything that comes to you when we go through the process. We'll do an exercise this morning. But as we go through the process, whatever comes through, sometimes things come to us in pictures, sometimes they come in sound, sometimes they come in feelings. They can come in a myriad of ways. But however it comes, don't question it. Don't try to analyze it. Don't try to figure it out. Just allow yourself to be with whatever comes. And the important thing is, after we go through this process, to just write it down. Just write down what you got. You don't have to then try to figure it out. Visioning, by the way, is not a planning process. You don't start visioning for something and then start planning how you're going to accomplish it. Because, if God has the vision, God also knows how to accomplish it. And so that's why we do the inner work. That's why we do the work of releasing and letting go. That's why we do the work of embracing those things that we need to embrace so that we can be the vehicle through which that vision can be made manifest. But so long as we're trying to be out there doing it and making it happen, God can't work. Because when we're out there doing it, trying to make it happen, we're trying to do our own vision rather than God's vision. So is everybody with me? Let's take a breath. So we're going to start today we're just going to be today looking at what is God's vision for my life. And God has a vision for each and every life here. Each and every life here. And once we get the answers that we get, whatever you get today, and if you don't get anything, don't worry about it. Don't be concerned about it. Just be. Because God doesn't work just in this church, just in this service. You may be driving down the avenue, or you may be in the shower next week, or you may be in a dream, or whatever, however it comes. The important thing is to be aware. Your awareness has to be heightened during this period that you're visioning, because answers are always coming. Different things are always coming. Don't question, oh, is this me thinking? Or was that God? Whatever. Just write it down. Keep track of it. Notice the little things that are beginning to shift for you as we go along. Are you willing to do this? I think it's powerful because we have seen powerful results here at the center since we started the visioning process. And we want all of you, we want this whole community to be practicing visioning. So let's take a breath and let's turn within in this moment. And before we go, there's paper in the front pew pockets, the pockets in front of you, blank paper. So when we come out of this exercise, you can just write down what you get. And if you don't have a pew pocket in front of you, there's one behind you. You can get paper if you'd like. So let's take a breath. Paul, you gonna give us some traveling music? Softly. Let's breathe as we turn within. We're just going to breathe in and breathe out. And you don't even have to rustle your papers right now because we're not ready to write anyway. And so we're just breathing now into that place where we know and sense and feel the presence of God. Breathing in, breathing out. This presence of God is always available to us. It is always right where we are. We focus our attention on our breathing. We take a breath and go even deeper into spirit, letting go even more. And so it is from this deep place of awareness that I ask the question for each of us. What is God's vision for my life? Take a breath. What is God's vision for my life? What does God's vision look like? How does God see itself as me? Continue to breathe. What does God's vision for my life feel like? We take a breath as we keep our hearts open, our minds open. How does God see itself as me? How does God want to show up as me? Does God's vision have a sound? A taste? A smell? Reveal your vision for my life to me, O God. I am open and receptive. We allow in this moment ourselves to be filled with the presence of God. Revealing itself to each of us as me. We allow ourselves to catch that vision. And so we're just going to allow ourselves to begin to breathe normally now. Just coming back into our bodies, coming back into this time and this space. Allowing ourselves to be fully present on our seats. Hearts remaining open. Knowing that God's vision is dynamic. It is always unfolding. And so as we bring this formal time of visioning to a close, our hearts remain open and receptive to the constant revealing that is happening. So we take a breath. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and take a few moments to Just write down what you got, what came up for you. And as I said before, don't discount anything. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to know what it means. Just write it down. Doesn't have to make sense to you. And keep breathing as you're writing. This is just the beginning. Let's take another 45 seconds to just jot down what you got. Thank you, Paul and band. As you go through this week, be aware of this feeling that you had in this experience of visioning this morning. Be aware of that place to which you went to be open to God's vision. And that's the place you want to return to over and over, to be available, to be open. And you can do that whether you're sitting in meditation or not. Return to that place that's always available to us within us. However, I encourage you, as you're practicing visioning for now, to start with the meditation. When you're meditating, which is our first of the 7 sacred practices, is meditation. So when you're in meditation, just then move into that space of visioning, because the meditation helps to open us up. And when we're open, then ask the question, God, what is your vision for my life? Reveal that to me. And then just sit and wait. The thing that trouble that a lot of people have with visioning is that it's a slow process. It isn't a rapid process. It's not something that we make happen. We just sit and wait and we allow it to unfold. And it unfolds in God's time and God's way. And it's always perfect. The timing is always perfect. The way is always perfect. But it's the only time and the only way is God's way. And so I invite you to incorporate this into your spiritual practice this week. Incorporate this opening ourselves up. Incorporate this becoming self-empty and God-filled into our practice, so that we allow our every action, our every thought, our everything that we do to be informed by God and by God's vision for itself as each one of us. And that's how we know that we're walking in oneness with God. That's how we know that we have given up the sense of separation that we walk in much of the time, when we just are willing to return to center, return unto God, and allow God to show us what it wants to be as each one of us, how it wants to be as each one of us. It already knows, and it will reveal it to us. Let's take a breath. Let's turn within for prayer. And so just continuing in this consciousness that's been established here already, this consciousness of the presence of God, this consciousness of the life of God that's seeking expression as each one of us, this consciousness that already knows who we are, this consciousness from which we can never be separate, this oneness, this consciousness of God is where we are in this moment. How awesome is this? How awesome is this to be a resting place for us? How awesome is this space to be a dwelling place for us when we open our hearts and allow them to be dwelling places for God? All things are made new. All things are set right, because in this place we see it right. And so I just say thank you, Father, Mother God, for all that has taken place here this day. Thank you for the explosive blessings of our lives that we are beginning to experience in our lives as we let go of all the stuff that we've been holding on to, all the stuff that we thought was important in our lives. As we can release and let go of those things, we can become all that we were created to be. And how grateful I am for the willingness of each of us to step up and step into this space, to come up higher, into a higher consciousness, into a God consciousness, into oneness. It takes courage to live in oneness. It takes courage to let go of separation. And we have the courage right here and right now to step up and to step into oneness with God. In this place, there's perfect health and wholeness. There's abundance and prosperity. There's a releasing and a letting go of lack and limitation or any sense of that. There's all needs met in each and every moment of each and every day. For God shows up as whatever it is we think we may need at any time. God shows up as a thing itself. And so we just allow God to show up in our lives right here, right now, as we move into oneness with it. I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer this day. You may speak their names silently or loud, and you may speak them now. So for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them, just as God is right here where we are. This word goes out to anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day. Any situation or circumstance, God's in the midst of it. And all indeed is well. So I simply say thank you, Father, Mother God, for the blessing of this time. Thank you, Father, Mother God, for everything. I'll just allow it to be now. And so it is.